to this huddle evening. We do have, we're going to lead us off in prayer and scripture. So I'd like to call up Sister Chaplain Jade to open us up with prayer and scripture. Let's give her a round of applause as she comes forward.
Good evening, huddle. Opening prayer. Special prayer for our leader, Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton, and young people going to school and college, those that are ill, those sick and shut in, and against spiritual, earthly confusion, gun violence, and those affected by local crime and hate crimes and health disparities. Our scriptures come from John 1:29 through 34. The next day, John saw Jesus coming toward him and said, "Look, the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world. This is the one I meant when I said, 'A man who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me.' I myself did not know him, but the reason I came baptizing with water was that he might be revealed to Israel." Then John gave this testimony: "I saw the Spirit come down from heaven as a dove and remain on him. And I myself did not know him, but the one who sent me to baptize with water told me, 'The man whom you see the Spirit come down and remain is the one who will baptize with the Holy Spirit. I have seen and I testify that this is God's chosen one.'" John 1:25 through 34, NIV.
Thank you so much, Sister. All right. So to kick things off next, I would like to call up our co-director and National Action Network's membership director, Ms. Dominique Sharpton. Let's give her a round of applause, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So this week's action alerts, as you know, Loudmouth, Reverend Sharpton's documentary, hit theaters across the country and had a really big, great opening week in theaters across the country, across the nation. Thousands of people, moviegoers, headed to theaters throughout the week to view Loudmouth, the documentary that traces the activism of National Action Network's founder and president, Reverend Al Sharpton. National Action Network's Youth Huddle members went tonight, or this afternoon rather, to see Loudmouth. Many of them went to see the movie at Union Square downtown. But the 2-hour documentary has received rave reviews and is the first major documentary focused squarely on the life of a living civil rights leader. On opening night last Friday, New York City Mayor Eric Adams joined Reverend Sharpton at the screening at Magic Johnson Theater. Many of us went. Many of us have volunteered throughout the week to really spread the word on Loudmouth. And like I said, NAN Youth Huddle members, some of them went tonight, this afternoon. So I don't know if anyone wants to share their thoughts or perspectives, but I believe we're going to have a moment later on in the program where we'll hear from some of those who went to see the film today. But there's still time to see it, and if you go on our website, you can look and check out the remaining theaters that Loudmouth is playing. It'll also be coming on Amazon Prime and also Apple TV starting on January 13th, so that's MLK Day weekend, and we're looking forward to that. And then it'll also premiere on BET Network and also, Showtime. Coming soon in the month of February. So we have a long life that Loudmouth is going to live, and we're excited, and definitely congratulations to Reverend Sharpton and the entire success of the film. Also, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries came to Harlem to National Action Network's House of Justice last week as we welcomed leaders from across the city to NAN's House of Justice to celebrate the historic selection of incoming House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. It was dubbed Hakeem Jeffries Day, and the Brooklyn congressman, who has been a member of NAN for many decades, also spoke to the audience. It was a historic moment and an enormous step up for the Black community, said Reverend Sharpton. Those of you who know, he has seen Hakeem Jeffries grow over the last 25 years. And over that time, he said that he saw his passion and dedication to the fight for racial justice. So now we are excited, of course, to see him in his new capacity, serving as House Democratic Minority Leader, and we wish him great success, and also know that we'll be heavily involved in a lot of the things that he's doing and wants to bring, of course, to the socioeconomic arena and to the political arena as it comes very, very soon for all of us. Also this week, Reverend Sharpton keynoted a conference at the National Black Churches. He traveled to Orlando, Florida, where he delivered the keynote address at the Conference of National Black Churches, which is led by Reverend Dr. W. Franklin Richardson, National Action Network's chairman of the board, and also senior pastor of Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon. We offer our condolences. We lost one of our National Action Network presidents and one of the founders of NAN's Nassau County chapter. Mr. E. Reginald Pope passed away last week. And we definitely want to send our condolences not only to the members of NAN's Nassau County chapter, but the family of Mr. E. Reginald Pope. He was definitely a really strong advocate for justice and a longtime activist, and our hearts and our prayers go out to him and, of course, his family during this tragic loss. Congratulations, we applaud Dr. Claudine Gay, who will become the first person of color to lead Harvard University. She is the daughter of Haitian immigrants, and her academic credentials are really impressive. And Nan looks forward to working with her in the future. She is now the president of Harvard University. And speaking of which, we are joined by our two leaders of National Action Network, our youth leaders who are home on, I believe, Christmas or holiday break from school, Usman Diallo and Felivi Dosa. So I don't know if y'all want to address the huddle formally. If you have something to say, we invite you to come to the mic right now and talk to us. Felivi, Usman.
Hello, National Action Network. It's always an honor to be back. This is where it all started, here in the huddle. My name is Felivi Dosa. I'm a junior at Morehouse College, studying business with a concentration in marketing. While being in Atlanta, definitely kept the push going. Did a lot of voter registration at Morehouse, at Spelman. It was very nice speaking to a lot of the freshmen and getting their insight specifically around voting. A lot of them was not from Georgia, so getting them registered in Georgia, telling them that for the next 4 years, this is your life. Atlanta is gonna be your home, specifically for school. And we had a lot of great opportunities. For us, it was a little bit different being from Morehouse to Spelman. The candidates running went to our school. Not saying that we're endorsing them, but it was definitely nice to have them come to our school and all that. Another thing we also did was when Loudmouth came out, got a couple students to go around in Atlanta, specifically the malls, and to go out and promote it. It was really good. They were even able to watch clips of the movie because some of the movie theaters were very nice to us and letting us in to watch part of it. I didn't get to see the whole thing, but I was able to see the first 30 minutes, which was really great for me. One of the biggest projects I also wanted to do when I was in Atlanta was to fix up the Atlanta house. The garage had a lot of stuff that was supposed to be thrown out, and one day I spoke to Ron Saylor and a lot of the staff there, and we were able to just throw out a couple things. So, you got anything you want to say?
Give him a round of applause, y'all. I mean, he basically spoke on the work side of it. By the way, my name is Usman Diallo. It all started for me here as well. But what I wanted to say is that the time we were away here, a lot has happened to our NAN family in the House of Justice. We have people that passed, Mama Kathy's, and just got out of surgery in the hospital. And I want us all to like embrace each other at the end of this night, to let us know that we're all here for each other and that we really are a family. Because while I was away and I heard the news, I was shocked, especially with Big Al and everybody else. Like, it hurt because strangers became family members to me. And that really was, I've dealt with like death, but like, damn, like, I just seen these people every time I come here. Oh, what's up, big man? This, that, the third. And it's like, it just hurt and it's different. So at the end, we should end off with a prayer, and we should all come up here and embrace each other and things of that nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brothers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Always good to have y'all back in town and y'all doing y'all thing here, in Albany and in Atlanta. And, we have more youth huddlers that are coming home for the holiday break as they finish up their finals. All righty. So, to kick things off next, we're going to get into the Black History Fact of the Day, presented by yours truly, Francis. Come on up. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. This day in Black History, December 19th, 1875. Carter Goodwin Woodson, credited as the father of Black History Month, was born in New Canton, Virginia on December 19th, 1875. The son of free slaves, Woodson would go on to become one of the first African Americans to receive a doctorate from Harvard University and one of the first blacks to earn a PhD in the United States. A scholar and advocate for the study of Black history in schools, Woodson co-founded the Association for Study of Negro Life in 1915 and established the scholarly publication, the Journal of the Negro History, the following year. Woodson used his influence to rally schools and other organizations to incorporate Black history into their programs. His efforts eventually led to the establishment of Negro History Week in Washington in 1926, my fault, and the publishing of the first issue of Negro History Bulletin in 1937. In 1976, President Gerald R. Ford issued the first message of observance of Black History Month. 10 years later, Congress designated February National Black History Month or Afro-American History Month. Woodson died on April 3rd, 1950, at the age of 74. That's it.
Thank you, brother. All right. Next up, I'm going to call up for our Artivism section, call up Brother Danielle and Mr. Arnold Penix for our NAN Arts and Culture. Let's give them a round of applause.
No justice. No peace. No justice. No justice. No justice. What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? When do we want it? When do we want it? Fist bump the person next to you and tell them you love them. And where's Marcus Al? Oh, Lord, because that's his part now. Anyway, we are here in NAN Arts and Culture, and Daniel has a special presentation, so here he is.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Youth Huddle, good evening. How we doing tonight? We all right? What's going on? A lot going on in the world. A whole lot going on in the world, and it's important that we keep our eyes on the prize, so to speak. And our prize that we have received so far by the grace of God is the legislature. We've been blessed to, in our lifetimes, take witness and bear witness to. So as we roll into the Arts and Artivism segment, I want to highlight the artist Jessie Wu and what she says at the end of her singing the National Action Network anthem, and that's not what it is, the national anthem. Now, for those that are familiar with the history of some of the songs that we sing when we pledge allegiance to the flag, for example, we know that these songs were written years ago, years before our time, decades ago, if not centuries. And we have to really pay attention to progressions that we are experiencing as a people, as a Black people, as a community of African American descendants of the diaspora. We need to really highlight those that have a platform to speak their mind and say something relevant during relevant times in the state of emergencies, such as those that we've been bearing witness to with respect to the police murderings of innocent black lives, innocent lives, period. But it seems to have been popularized to slaying our black people, and that is not acceptable. We are not willing to accept that. So we are going to take a listen to the artist Jessie Wu singing National Anthem and paying attention to what she says at the end. And this was before the verdict for the Breonna Taylor case had been rendered.
You see, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, saved us that star-spangled banner, yeah, wave. Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor.
And it's important that we understand, we should interview this young lady and why she decided to state what she stated. And I feel as though after watching the film Loudmouth, seeing some of the family members of the Breonna Taylor life and legacy in that film, it hits very close to home. So I want to say thank you to the artist for even thinking to mention such a significant statement in face of adversity to uplift our peoples from the oppression that we've encountered, the oppression that we endure but will not allow to persist. So that is the Art and Artivism segment for this evening. Thank you, National Action Network, House of Justice, and Youth Huddle.
But of course, we want to wish everyone a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas. So we want to end on a high note with we wish you a Merry Christmas. Stand up where you are. To all of those who watched throughout the year here at the NAN Youth Huddle, we wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Again, we wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Happy holidays, everyone. See you. And when Kwanzaa time is coming.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shout out to 2023. All right, so next up, I'm gonna call up Kaylee. She is going to give us some membership and text alerts. Where's Kaylee? Oh, there is no Kaylee. She's in a meeting. No, we ain't got time for that. So I'll give it to you. So, is everybody an updated member for the National Action Network for the year 2020 and upcoming 2023? I'm assuming not. So, if you are, this applies to you as well as those who are not members. The best way to stay informed and into action is to become a member of NAN. Stay informed to close events to where you live. You can text Justice, followed by your state, to 59769. That's Justice, follow Justice 59769, followed by your state. And be sure to tune in each and every Saturday here at the House of Justice for the Saturday Action Rally, starting at 9 a.m. each and every Saturday. That includes this Saturday, too. Next up, we are going to get into the fun segment, the Open Huddle Good News. So as the holidays are approaching, anybody that want to share good news that's coming up, in your lives or that has taken place in the past week, month, please share, please share. Oh, hey, Rosie.
We got Christmas presents early last week. We went to a party and we got to open Christmas presents and it was early, so it wasn't Christmas. So I'm kind of happy about that.
Thank you, Rosie.
Well, my semester is about to end, so I'm starting college classes soon, and
You excited about that?
nope. And next Wednesday, I'm going to graduate from my cooking classes.
Shout out. You said cooking classes? We might have you be part of hospitality.
Good evening, everyone. I have the privilege this spring semester of taking classes at Google, so yeah.
Welcome home, Ak. Welcome home. Anybody else? So, I actually have some good news. It's good news. So, my dad's side of the family, they're from North Carolina. Many of them I have not seen in years, especially since the pandemic. I have 5 deaths in my family from COVID. So this past weekend, I had the opportunity to take a trip to go see what I thought was just going to be my aunt and my uncle, but it ended up being my entire dad's side of the family. So flew into Raleigh, and we just drove all over the state of North Carolina, visited family in Fayetteville, Greensboro, Roseboro, Durham, went to go see my grandparents' grave. Saturday would have been my grandmother's birthday, but she passed from breast cancer. So the good news is that I had the opportunity to see relatives, that I haven't seen in such a long time. And I usually don't like going down south. Being from here, it's a different, y'all get the point. But it was actually probably one of the best trips that I ever did because, of course, we played a whole lot of spades and I went to Waffle House, did all that, y'all get the drift. So it was a really good trip. And it turned out to be really, really cool. So I was actually excited that I got to do that and flew back yesterday and last night. So that was really cool for me. Any other good? Oh, yeah, come on up.
Hi, I'm Donna Tsufuda, and I'm honored to be here. Some years ago, I helped launch an organization called 1M1B, 1 million for 1 billion, and it was started by a gentleman in India who saw that there was youth in disadvantaged communities all over the world who wanted jobs and employment and were frustrated, and he said, well, how can we help these young people generate their own jobs that support their communities and not just count on the government or companies, but really generate their future? So that was some years ago, and since then, young people, 14, 15, 16, 17 in high school, have come up and created projects in the environment and for the elderly, for helping women in prisons. They looked at what they were passionate about, and they said, what can I do to help my community become better? And so they came last week to the United Nations, and they shared with the leaders there, and I'm hoping that on their next trip, they come and meet some of the youth that are making a difference here in Harlem, and we shall see whether that can happen. So anyway, thank you. And all of you have really inspired the possibility of youth reaching across nations, and maybe some of the issues of this world will be solved by you guys because you really have the smarts to do it. Thanks.
I almost forgot I kind of really wanted to say this. Earlier this morning, Usman Ahmed and I were at Central Park, and they just changed the gate for the Exonerated Five and named it after them. And I feel like we definitely should talk about that. It was, for us, just amazing to be in that space. Of course, Reverend Sharpton spoke, and I just feel like that's really good news.
So I forgot to say this, but next March I'm going to the UN for my Model UN classes.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Plenty of good news in the air. As we move along to the Did You Know section. So, as enthused as she is, first up, I'm going to call up Giselle to give us her first article. Let's give her a round of applause.
Very enthusiastic. Good evening, Huddle. Okay, so my article is about mental health of incarcerated LGBTQ plus youth is understudied, but new analysis shows kids are in crisis. Existing research shows that LGBTQ plus youth are at greater risk of disenfranchisement that will put them on the path to prison. Yet how their mental health is affected while incarcerated and the details of what they experience behind bars is barely studied. Experts say dampening urgency to demand resources and inclusive policies. In Minnesota, queer girls and LGBTQ plus youth of color are the most likely to be kept in juvenile correction centers, according to a recent study from the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law, looking at the mental health experiences of youth in those facilities and public schools. While incarcerated, LGBTQ plus youth experience more suicidal ideation and are more likely to attempt suicide or self-harm compared to both their incarcerated straight cisgender peers and LGBTQ plus youth in the public school system. Researchers that the 19th spoke with expect that LGBTQ plus youth in other states go through similar experiences of negative mental health while incarcerated, but they don't know for sure. Since the Minnesota Student Survey, the data on which the Williams Institute study is based, is the most comprehensive account of how incarceration can impact the mental health of queer youth that these experts have seen so far. LGBTQ plus youth are probably entering custody with worse mental health than their peers. Due to prejudice and discrimination, said Kirsty Clark, lead author of the study, and assistant professor of medicine and public policy at Vanderbilt University. But their analysis also found that even when controlling for exposure to childhood abuse and neglect, incarcerated LGBTQ plus youth still have higher risk for suicidal ideation and self-harm than others. What's that telling us is that there might be something unique about incarceration for sexual and gender minority youth that's predicting these poor outcomes over and above their peers, Clark said. If more states capture data on the mental and physical experiences of incarcerated LGBTQ plus youth and work to understand the best ways to safely obtain such data, a clearer picture would unfold. Existing research, which includes data sets focused on California and New York, has found that the LGBTQ youth of color are overrepresented in the country's juvenile justice system, as seen in studies by the Movement Advance Project and the Urban Institute. Queer girls are also overrepresented in juvenile detention centers in a 2017 study. The Williams Institute found that almost 58% of detained girls counted by the National Survey of Youth in Custody of 2012 identified as LGBTQ+. Bianca D.M. Wilson, senior scholar of public policy at the Williams Institute, said that while queer girls of color are overrepresented among juvenile detention facilities, more research is needed to understand where that inequality begins in the criminal justice system. Researchers need to understand more about where in that pipeline, whether it's at a point of arrest, dealing with probation or truancy, or sentencing, sexual orientation and gender identity become a basis for disproportionate policing, Wilson said. Likely reasons for the higher rate of poor mental health among detained LGBTQ plus youth include isolation, a higher risk of being victimized behind bars by other inmates or staff, and a lack of gender-affirming health care. LGBTQ plus youth may also be targeted for sexual violence and greater administrative punishment compared to their peers. Elon Meyer, senior scholar of public policy at Williams Institute and co-author of the study, worries about the cascading effects of being held in custody while dealing with the discrimination that makes many LGBTQ plus youth, and especially youth of color, more targeted by police than other kids in the first place. What pains me personally is what future are they going to have and how are they going to be helped while they're in custody, which is supposed to be corrective for youth, he said. In Minnesota, LGBTQ plus youth in correctional facilities is counted by the state survey in 2019 were on average 15 years old. That age is significant to Clark and Meyer when discussing the seriousness of the trauma experienced while in custody, considering 42% of those kids had considered suicide. Many kids are, at that time, just figuring out who they are, Clark said. Measuring the experiences of people who are incarcerated is difficult regardless of their sexuality, said Gabriel Schwartz, social epidemiologist and postdoctoral fellow at the Institute for Health Policy Studies at the University of California, San Francisco. Seeing an analysis like this one for the first time feels important to him. This paper, to me, shows that it's not just that queer people are over-disciplined in schools, over-policed in their lives, over-incarcerated. It's just that we then see that translate into real systemic violence against these queer youth to the extent that substantial portions of them want to die and are taking steps to kill themselves. And that is horrifying, Schwartz said. The Minnesota study offers unique data since researchers don't have enough information to get a full picture about what LGBTQ plus youth experience behind bars, Wilson said. Obtaining data on mental health is necessary, she said, but so is collecting more data among kids in school who are suspended and expelled. That includes LGBTQ plus status. That information will be key to learn more about the school-to-prison pipeline for queer youth, she said. Previous research has found that queer youth, especially youth of color, are more likely to be disciplined in school. That orderly discipline may be part of what puts some queer youth on a pathway to prison, Schwartz said. That path, as shown in Minnesota's data, ends in strong suicidal urges while incarcerated, underlines the importance of keeping LGBTQ plus youth out of the criminal justice system altogether, and to not ignore queer and trans youth in policy decisions, he said. An important part of the data collected by the Minnesota Student Survey is that it includes information on the mental health of LGBTQ plus youth in public school, as well as the mental health of incarcerated LGBTQ plus youth and their cisgender or straight peers. Being able to compare all of that data, especially since LGBTQ plus youth overall suffer from poor mental health, allows researchers to distill unique experiences among those who are incarcerated. Improving how all youth are treated while incarcerated is a good place to start, Schwartz said, since doing that can help queer youth while not requiring juvenile corrections facilities to implement targeted approaches that require currently unknown data. Researchers said that creating mental health services in prisons would specifically help queer youth, plus improving mental health services in schools and in foster care to hopefully lessen their chances of being on the pathway to incarceration in the first place. Queer Black women and non-binary advocates agree that better data collection is needed for LGBTQ plus people in the criminal justice system, questions that capture gender identity and sexual orientation of those who are behind bars. Kiera Johnson, executive director of the National LGBTQ plus Task Force, said that the federal government should expand research like the study seen in Minnesota. And frankly, I don't want the federal government doing it by themselves. We know our communities. There are organizations doing this kind of research. They just need the support to scale it, she said. So that concludes my Did You Know segment. I didn't have a question for this one. So anybody could come up and share their thoughts. on LGBTQ, mental health in general? Or no thoughts? That's fine. Oh, Mother Kennedy. Knew she was coming.
Evening Huddle. In this holiday season and hearing reports like this, just want people to stop and think for a minute. What if this was your child? What if this was your sister? What if this was your brother? Okay. What if this was your mother, your father, aunts, uncles, relatives? Just think about it. We are all human beings. And I always say we are spiritual beings expressing our human experience. So the incarceration and what happens with especially LGBT youth is something that's almost like a pipeline. If it's known and it's in the educational system, they're treated one way, not fairly, not honestly, and a lot of these kids run, scared from their parents, scared from the police, and scared from the educational system. So the thing is that there are programs like the Trevor Project, which is one of my favorites, is because they deal with young people who feel like they have absolutely nothing to offer. They feel like they're absolutely nothing, and the parents and the church and the educational system does not help. Silence gives consent, and silence also gives into suicidal thoughts and to suicidal behavior. First of all, the thing to recognize is parents need to realize that it's not their fault if their child is gay or if they exhibit these kind of behaviors. And instead of going with what society thinks is right or wrong, the biggest thing missing out of all of this is love. Being able to, yes, clap it up, love. Because we believe in our community that God, Goddess, whomever you call your higher power, is love. And love is for everyone. So if you see behavior in your child or sister, brother, relative, son, daughter, whatever, don't shun them. Don't go along with society. Realize they are human beings and they need love and they need acceptance. Once we begin to kind of look at the human side, then there is work to be done. And the biggest thing is learning acceptance, tolerance, patience. These things are very, very important. So I always talk to the young people who are gay, queer, however they identify themselves. Learn to love yourself. Learn to love yourself. Live your truth and laugh in the face of adversity and know that you are worth something. Long time ago, Jesse Jackson said, I am somebody. I try to impart this to our young gay youth. We are somebody. Well, I'm an elder, but still in all, we are somebody. We are human. And love always overcomes hate. Thank you.
Okay, Miss Loudmouth.
One thing that I just want to say is I think as activists, it's important for us to realize that it's more than just about getting everybody the rights that they deserve. It's very I feel like it's very easy to think about everyone deserves equal rights, but because that's just like it's something that's been advertised in a certain way. But I feel like what's more important a lot of the times, or what can be more important, is the quality of life. Equal quality of life for everybody. And once rights are afforded, pushing for those to be enforced and allow those things to improve the quality of life. And I think the reason why it's so hard for people to consider, how are these people doing? Okay, we've, rights have been afforded. Okay, cool, but what is going on? How are they feeling? Is because that takes you listening. It takes you learning. And I feel like that's something that we all as people need to understand, that it doesn't just stop at a bill was written in Congress, so therefore we're good. It continues into how do these people feel, where are these people struggling, where are the disparities at? So yeah, I feel like that's really important.
I have to say this because throughout my youth and my teen years, it was very difficult for me because I was born heterosexual, but I had to pretend. So I would sneak off to see my girlfriend in order to be able to participate in dramatic plays and productions and leave football practice to go. Then I had to develop a whole personality to be accepted in the arts community. This is very emotional for me because, that's why I became a NAN Performing Activist. I created a NAN Performing Activist Committee. So for those, there's a lot of artistic brothers out there and women out there who are heterosexual, who want to be participating in the arts. And we are shunned a lot of times by the fact that we don't participate in certain activities. So most of the time I keep to myself. I come and do what I do. I'm very disciplined. And I was all that way since I was a teenager, but it's very difficult for me to understand that I was shunned in the Broadway community. I was not able to participate. And once I never forget, I was next in line for Harlem Song, was at the Apollo Theater. And then once they found out they saw me dating one of the publicists, and I said, oh, I'm not gonna get the part. I'm not gonna get the part. I said, so I'm just letting you know, there were a lot of young people as teenagers when I was coming up who were not a part of the community, but they had to pretend to be a part of the community in order to be accepted in the arts community. And that could cause a lot of emotional stress too, as it caused me as a young child, as a young teen. And now as an adult, I create my own way and I do my own and I accept me for who I am, and that's just the way it is. And I love all people. I love all the arts. I'm a manager and I manage gay, LGBT plus. I don't know what the plus means, but anyway, I accept everyone, but at the same time, I had to live my truth, and my truth is that I am a black male heterosexual who love the arts, and I'm an arts man, and that's it. Peace.
Thank you for all of your comments. I would like to turn it back to Trey.
Thank you so much, Giselle, and everybody who spoke. All right, next up, call up Brother Mo Bars. He's going to talk to us a little bit about Megan Thee Stallion. Let's give him a round of applause. Did I say her name right? Oh, okay. Yeah, I forget, it's late. I've been working all day.
Hello. So we're going to talk about Meg. This is yours. This is yours. All right. Megan Thee Stallion and the Catch-22 for black women who seek justice. This is going to split the room tonight. Split the room. All right. It has happened before. A prominent woman in the entertainment industry accuses a man with fame of his own. It has happened before. A prominent woman in the entertainment industry accuses a man with fame of his own of violence. Charges are filed, and almost instantly the accuser is subject to trial by popular culture. People on Twitter call her a liar and worse. Memes with her likeness and words are deployed to mock and discredit her. It happened recently with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, and is currently playing out in the Los Angeles courtroom with Megan Thee Stallion, who has accused Tory Lanez of shooting her. But this latest case is compounded by the way that race and misogyny often combine to act as a judge and jury for black women in America, both within and outside of the courtroom. Black women are in a catch-22 when they speak out about domestic violence, said Antanya Randolph, an assistant professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, who studies misogyny and hip-hop culture.
Amber Heard is in a very different situation than Megan because she's not a black woman in the United States who is being called on repeatedly to uphold the cultural requirement to protect black men against the criminal legal system, Randolph told the 19th. It's real that the criminal legal system disproportionately punishes black and brown men, but black women are left holding the bag and have to protect black men from the criminal legal system, she said. But then black women are also expected to stand up and speak out and appear strong. And then when they do so, they are seen as speaking for the whole black community and can face backlash for that. White women are not faced with this impossible dilemma. Police arrested Lanes during a traffic stop on July 12, 2020, after receiving reports of gunfire from a group leaving Kylie Jenner's Hollywood Hills home in Los Angeles. At the time, Megan Thee Stallion, whose real name is Megan Pete, was taken to the hospital for a foot injury. One she initially told police was the result of stepping on broken glass, and later said was actually the result of having been shot in the foot by Lanes after a dispute while leaving Jenner's house. The surgeon who treated Megan Thee Stallion in the hospital for her foot injury testified this week to seeing gunshot wounds in her foot, as well as seeing bullet fragments on X-ray imaging. Megan Thee Stallion testified this week that she still experiences pain and nerve damage in her feet. Lanes, whose real name is Daystar Peterson, is charged with assault with a semi-automatic handgun, carrying a loaded, unregistered firearm in a vehicle, and discharging the firearm with gross negligence. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Since coming forward with her accusations against Lanes, Megan Thee Stallion has faced a lot of hatred directed toward her from the internet and within her industry. Drake put out a song saying she lied and didn't get the joke, but other black women have also rallied around her. Randolph said the Lanes trial represents something that so many black women have found themselves running up against, famous or not. Megan Thee Stallion took the stand this week to describe the events surrounding Lane's 2020 arrest. In her testimony, she spoke directly about many of these things, the dynamics, and described feeling trapped. The night the alleged shooting, I don't feel safe in the car, I don't feel safe with the police, is what she said. She also spoke to the hate she received. Because I was shot, I've been turned into some kind of villain, and he's the victim. This has messed up my whole life. This whole situation in the industry is like a big boys club. Tia Tyree, a professional of communications at Howard University, whose research focuses on hip-hop and African-American female representation in media, called out the lack of belief faced by black women. Often black women don't get the privilege of being victims, Tyree said. Often in society, black women are the second to be seen as someone who has been victimized, second to be seen as someone who has legitimate health care problems, second to be seen as someone facing real social ills. So when black women come forward, they are not believed. Tyree explained that this creates a cycle of intense stigma for black women. Tyree said her research has shown that victims are also concerned about their own community. Their neighbors, friends, and church will react in whether they will impose social consequences. This is further complicated by the reality that the black community knows, understands, and believes that the court system does not work for us and often fails us, Tyree said. As black female victims move toward usage of a system that may or may not provide the justice we deserve and seek, there will always be trials and tribulation. There will always be concern. There will always be doubt about whether you should utilize the very system that's there to protect you, she continued. But black women should remember that you have the voice and right to do it. You should never silence yourself, because when you do, you allow the person who has been the victimizer to win without consequence. Many women and black women especially have rallied around Megan Thee Stallion, especially as the villainization around her has ramped up. From the beginning, Megan Thee Stallion herself has spoken to the role she knows she is playing on behalf of black women by testifying for the state against Tory Lanez and publicly discussing her alleged assault, including an opt for the New York Times in 2020. In addition to the open letter released last month and signed by women including Me Too founder Tarana Burke and Representative Maxine Waters, social media is filled with posts from women about what Megan Thee Stallion's words or presence have meant to them. For many, the difficulty Megan Thee Stallion has faced in speaking truth is familiar. Women, especially women of color, and especially black women, are often doubted, said Deborah Turkenheimer, a professional at Northwestern Law and the author of a book, Credible, Why We Doubt Accusers and Protect Abusers. It's often assumed that they are not telling the truth, that they are to blame. I'm almost done, y'all. Those who are the most vulnerable and the most marginalized are least likely to be seen as reliable sources of information. The way that translates is that women, especially women of color, have enormous obstacles to mount when they come forward with allegations of any kind, especially allegations of gender-based violence, and especially when those allegations are made against powerful men. Megan's fan base is not just men, and I suspect that's why there has been such a backlash against her, Randolph said. She doesn't need to play to the traditional male fan base or the music industry. She doesn't act like she owes her career to the music industry and male rappers. I think that's threatening to a male-dominated industry. Randolph continued, hip-hop culture has done a lot to parade misogyny and has a lot to answer for in promoting misogyny. Hip-hop culture has made it so that it is harder to be empathetic when women come forward about domestic violence. Misogyny predates hip-hop, but hip-hop has been a space that has made misogyny profitable and made it so that violence toward black women is fun to watch and pleasurable. It's that going on in the background, then it's harder as a culture to be empathetic to women's truth. Per instruction from the judge, the jury is now prepared to review additional evidence over the weekend and next week. Tyrese says she hopes that black women see Megan Thee Stallion as a woman who is standing up for herself and that people understand what makes her actions so remarkable. I am hopeful that she becomes the face of the progress, that she becomes the face of what it looks like to stand in your truth and stand in the quest to be heard and seek justice, Tyrese said. Okay, that was a handful. All right, so going back, before I ask these questions, so if you notice in the article, they said that Megan said she stepped on some glass. Megan's reason for saying that was because her excuse was she was trying to protect a black man because that night when it happened at Kylie Jenner's house, the officers pulled up real aggressive. So in her mind, she just thought of a black man getting in trouble and what it could lead to if it went left. So she said that's the reason why she lied and said that it was glass that was in her foot and that cut her up instead of an actual gunshot wound. Now, after that, I don't know if you've been following the court case, but it's just been reported that no gunshot residue was found on Tory Lanez, but it was found on the best friend, the other woman that was there. See, I don't know if you guys are following, so I'm just giving you the facts of what's going on before I ask the question. So going back to what I said initially about Megan Thee Stallion, lying about, trying to cover for Tory Lanez. Even after whatever happened that night, she lied to law enforcement and said, I did not get shot, it was glass that cut me. So my first question is, should Meg have lied about what happened to her foot, or should she have just kept it 100 and said what happened so maybe she wouldn't get the backlash and stuff on social media now? Because that's why a lot of people are calling her a liar and stuff, because she didn't start out with telling what really happened. So what do you guys think about her lying about that? And should she have come up? Please don't say it from the back of the room. Come up, grab the mic, tell us how you feel. We're live.
I know you're probably going to get in big trouble if you tell the truth. But if it did go right, imagine what could happen. You wouldn't be called liar or anything, so you should have just told the truth. On the other hand, you should have just kept it a lie because you might get in big trouble. Just saying.
All right. So she should have told the truth from the gate. Anybody else? So okay, here's one. Here's his Mom Dukes is coming. She's coming to reinforce what baby girl said.
Okay, so what I would say is that a lot of times with these types of cases, we, I want to put it in like layman's terms, right? We feed off of the background of black women being defeminized and things like that, right? So it's easy to believe that we're being brutalized and things like that. But when you tell lies, initial lies, you make it hard for people to believe you when you feel like you want to tell the truth. So that's one thing that I would say. I'm not going to say that she's lying, she's telling the truth, but if you initially lie and then change your story, how are we supposed to believe you?
Very well put. That's true. Ladies. Kennedy.
in this society, when you look at it, be you black, white, blue, green, gay, straight, or whatever. So most of the time in this society, you think about it. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And then a lot of times people get to the point they feel they better do as they damn well please. And because of that, here is another case of women of color being caught in the middle. Now, she called herself saying this to protect the black man. Then in the long run, what happens is it comes back to, well, she lied. And guess what? Guess who's the hardest on her? The women. You know, you look back over the society, and anytime like a black woman says something one way or the other, who comes down on her the hardest? That's why I'm always talking about sisterhood, because sisterhood is powerful. But the thing is, remember, this whole thing about divide and conquer, keeping separation, women against men, and that's why I'm always all over the top every time somebody says guys and women and girls call each other guys, because guys would never call another guy a gal. So we need to recognize inclusivity. It's very important. Guys and gals, girls and boys, sisters and brothers, mothers and fathers, yana, 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 on and on and on. Inclusivity is very important, up where we belong. As women, if we refer to ourselves as women, we ain't guys. You know, it's like, he's the guy, I'm the gal. And anytime it comes, I don't care, it comes from the back of the room. I even did this with the governor. Not guys and gals. Because a lot of times, a men be in the room, and 40% of the room is women, and the other 10% is guys. What does he say? Does he say men and women? No, guys, 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 guys. And women go behind and do the same thing. No. Get into inclusivity, know where you belong, tell the truth, and shame the devil. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so my next question is Megan Thee Stallion, with what's going on with her right now and the facts, you know, with her saying what she said in the beginning and just her career and her being in the spotlight, is Megan Thee Stallion the right woman to be the face of being heard and seeking justice? Why or why not you feel Megan Thee Stallion should or shouldn't be the face for women seeking justice and equality in situations like this and other situations?
I think it all depends on the evidence that comes out. I feel like right now there's still a lot of stuff up in the air, whether or not Tory Lanez's DNA was on the gun is up in the air, and so I feel like it's more important that we wait for the verdict to happen. It's more important that we wait for the case to conclude, for us to come to our own conclusions. Also, something I feel just about this case, this situation in general is I feel that the narrative that Megan Thee Stallion is the one who is primarily being victimized is always been a bit strange to me. Of course, she deserves support because she is the victim in this situation. However, me personally, I'm a fan of both of their musics, and I've seen far more backlash towards Tory Lanez, both current and when it happened, in terms of industry support when they come out with their albums. Megan Thee Stallion has far more features and people willing to work with her and things of that nature than Tory. Tory Lanez pretty much doesn't really have anybody working with him ever at this point. And so while I, of course, feel like there is an agenda of misogyny, I don't feel like that is the primary societal reaction in this situation.
Thank you, thank you. Anyone else? Should Meg be the face of anybody else? Okay, so final thought. Going back to an earlier incident between two celebrities, Chris Brown and Rihanna. So the night of the inauguration, when Obama first
got inaugurated, that was the night that Chris Brown, allegedly beat Rihanna in the car. That same night. So, allegedly, yeah. I mean, I'm just, we're live, so I don't know. So, all right, yeah, all right, well, whatever. So, what I'm saying is, during that time, Chris Brown, the reason why Rihanna was even more victimized, well, of course, she was the person who the beating was inflicted on, but it was more so because Chris Brown was trying to dismiss it. Chris Brown was giving these short, heartless apologies. He was like trying to rush the apology. I'm sorry. Everybody make mistakes. And it grew on America looking at him as such the bad guy. And you see how that turned out for Chris Brown. And it's still killing him to this day. Like recently with the American Music Awards, he couldn't play Mike. And trust me, that's just going all the way back. They'll never get the taste of what he did to Rihanna out of their mouths. So when it comes to black social media, when I talk about this topic, I always talk about black men and black women because I don't know what it is to be white or Asian or what they do in their communities and their mix. When it comes to black men and black women, I feel like we should support each other, but when it comes to the genders, if somebody is wrong, let them be wrong. Like with black men, all black men aren't good black men. They do wrong things. I don't think we should defend that just because they a man. When it comes to women, all black women, yes, all black women, but if a black woman does something wrong or something that doesn't represent the black women correctly as a whole, people should step back and not represent them just because they're the gender. If somebody's wrong, we need to let them be out there and be wrong as a collective. Let black men and black women come together when someone is wrong instead of just trying to cover for them because of the gender. Because one of the biggest things on social media, and I was talking about this last week, is the back and forth between black men and women. It's just a back and forth all day long of us shooting at each other, and everybody, the world is watching. We just hate on each other. We talk about each other. You see the comments, it's just us all day long going at each other. Not a lot. You don't see it in the Latinos, whites, Asians. They got a nice, beautiful social media area. They got trees and stuff. And our social media world is always the hood, and it's always like it's just bad. So I just feel like we need to be more understanding and open and not defend people just because it looked on the outside like they were in the wrong or they were victimized. But we need to just be more honest about, what people are doing instead of defending incorrect things. Be man enough or woman enough to speak out and say, nah, even though he's a man, like I'm a man, homeboy was wrong. Or even though she's a woman, like I'm a woman, homegirl is wrong. There's no need to defend something that's incorrect. So that concludes my Did You Know for Megan Thee Stallion. And I'm passing it back to Trey.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, everybody who came up and spoke. Next up for our third Did You Know, I'm going to call our brother Danielle. So give him a round of applause as he makes his way up front.
Thank you, Trey. The Did You Know I'm reading is in regards to the killing of Tatiana Jefferson. The title of the article is Jury Deliberating on Sentence for Former Police Officer Convicted of Killing Tatiana Jefferson. A jury began deliberations Monday on a sentence for the former Texas police officer who was convicted of manslaughter last week for shooting Tatiana Jefferson in her own home in year 2019. Aaron Dean, the 38-year-old white former Fort Worth police officer, faces up to 20 years in prison for killing Jefferson, a 28-year-old black woman. The article goes on to say, the sentencing comes shortly after a brief trial fraught with issues of race, police violence, and gun rights. Much of the trial testimony also focused on police body camera footage of the shooting and a close examination of Dean's actions before, during, and after the single shot was fired. The case dates back to about 2:25 a.m. on October 12th, year 2019, when Dean and his police partner responded to Jefferson's house after a neighbor called a non-emergency police line to report that her doors were open. Dean and his police partner, Carol Darch, did not announce themselves as police at the home. And Dean then fatally shot through a bedroom window at Jefferson, who had been up late playing video games with her young nephew. Dean resigned from the force days afterward and was arrested and charged with murder in her killing. He has been out on bond for the last 3 years. At trial, defense attorneys said Dean fired in self-defense, and Dean testified that he fired at Jefferson because she pointed a gun at him. He testified that he believed the home was being burglarized because the doors were open and the place appeared ransacked. However, prosecutors argued there was no evidence he saw a gun in the woman's hand before he fired at her. Further, Jefferson's 11-year-old nephew, who was with her at the time, testified he did not see her raise a gun to the window. His police partner, Carol Darch, testified Dean did not mention he had seen a gun in the minutes after the shooting as they ran into the home. Though Dean was charged with murder, jurors were also allowed to convict him on lesser charge of manslaughter. The jury deliberated for more than 13 hours, according to CNN affiliate WFAA, before announcing a guilty verdict on Thursday. The manslaughter conviction of a police officer who was on duty is a first in Tarrant County, the station reported. Sentencing phase of the trial, the article reveals, on Friday, in the sentencing phase of the trial, jurors heard from various witnesses, including a psychologist who evaluated Dean before he was hired by the Fort Worth Police Department, and members of Jefferson's and Dean's families. The clinical and forensic psychologist, Dr. Kyle Clayton, described Dean as narcissistic and testified that he was not psychologically suitable to serve as a police officer. He said Dean exhibited signs of grandiosity. Jefferson graduated from Xavier University of Louisiana in year 2014 with a degree in biology and worked in pharmaceutical equipment sales, according to her family's attorney. She had moved to Fort Worth a few months earlier to take care of her ailing mother and her nephews. Family attorney S. Lee Merritt said at the time. Nephew police partner and Dean testified. The prosecution's first witness was Zion Carr, who was 8 years old and in the bedroom with his Aunt Tay when she was shot. Now 11, the boy testified they had accidentally burned hamburgers earlier in the night, so they opened the doors to air the smoke out of the house. He and his aunt were up late playing video games when Jefferson heard a noise outside. And she then went to her purse to get her gun. He testified. He did not see her raise her firearm towards the window. He testified. Zion said he did not hear or see anything outside the window, but he saw his aunt fall to the ground and start crying. Quote, "I was thinking, is it a dream?" End quote. He testified. Quote, "She was crying and just shaking." End quote. Prosecutors also called to the stand Dean's police partner, Darch, who testified she was with Dean when they went to investigate the home. She had her back to the window when Dean began to yell out commands for Jefferson to put her hands up. She testified. Darch said she started to turn around, heard a gunshot, then looked over Dean's shoulder and could see a face in the window with eyes, quote, as big as saucers, end quote. She testified she did not see Jefferson holding a gun and didn't recall Dean ever saying that Jefferson had a gun. Dean testified last Monday that he fired at Jefferson because she pointed a gun at him. So, that's the abridged version of what I'm reading, article from CNN. Right? CNN? So, my question that I'm going to voice is, what is your reaction to the defense regarding defendant officer Aaron Dean murdering Tatiana Jefferson? I'm also interested to find out, what types of training do you feel would be in the best interest to society to avoid unnecessary deaths from the hands of law enforcement? And I also ask, do you feel that all police officers should be allowed to fire firearms on duty? So if y'all need me to repeat what I asked, I can repeat. I'll actually voluntarily repeat if I don't hear anybody asking me to repeat, because I got a feeling y'all might not have received that information well in the amount of time that I spat it out. So my question is, what is your reaction to the defense regarding defendant officer Aaron Dean murdering Tatiana Jefferson? I'm asking, what types of training do you feel would be in the best interest to society to avoid unnecessary deaths from the hands of law enforcement? And do you feel that all police officers should be allowed to fire firearms on duty?
So I didn't really understand the first question, but the second question, what type of training is required for the officers? I believe there's no amount of training to stop another human being from having their biases and wanting to kill another person, because the way that just happened is unjust and shouldn't have happened, and that person shouldn't have become a police officer in the first place. So I believe what should happen is, during the recruiting phase, that the psychologist, she said that he didn't belong to be a police officer in the first place. That's supposed to be recommended, and that person should never have been employed. And the last one you said, should all police officers on duty be able to have their guns or fire their guns? I mean, I believe if they truly feel like their life is in danger, then yes. But if not, then you shouldn't.
Thank you for that response, Usman.
So yes, they should have a firearm. Like, I know that police officers have like a gun in their pocket, but I feel like they never be using them. Just saying. And if they ever lose one of their guns, I feel like they should have two, and they should be allowed to shoot them and pull the trigger.
Thank you for your response.
I think in terms of like training, I kind of agree with Usman. I feel like there wasn't much that could stop that situation besides there just being a different cop on the job, because people are going to have their biases. But I think to offer some semblance of a solution, I think de-escalation needs to be prioritized. In all these situations, it's people who are so trigger happy and whose first reaction is just gun, got to get my gun. And it's really hard for me to buy that all of these cops are always afraid of their life in all of these situations. And so I just feel like de-escalation needs to be prioritized, as well as psychological checks. If you're finding out after the fact that this person is clearly not mentally fit to be a police officer, then they shouldn't have never been in that situation. We hear all the time from cops the excuse that, well, being a police officer is a difficult job, and if it is, then if you're not mentally capable to do it, then you should not be a cop. And so I feel like routine mental health checks should be absolutely mandatory, either on a monthly or a bi-yearly basis.
Thank you for your response. Are you responding? All right.
Thank you. I think when we talk about trainings and all that stuff, especially with the NYPD, it's important to have more cops who are from the communities that they're serving. And I get it. A lot of us in the community may not like the opportunity to be in that sort of capacity. We're very kind of don't want the police over there, we're over here. But I do think that is important because what ends up happening is you get police officers who are first, not from the community. Second, a lot of cops do have military background. So to kind of give you an example, you know, if you were in Baghdad or if you were fighting a war for the last 5 years of your life, you come back home, you serve your community, you get a job in law enforcement, you're on the street. That combat mentality is now in an environment in which you are engaging in people who have different needs, who have different, circumstances going on. Combine that with your experience in direct conflict, that's a recipe for disaster. So I think it's important if, we as a community are a little bit more involved in law enforcement in our communities, not just going to the meeting, but serving in some sort of capacity. I just think that will really help in terms of de-escalation and all of that. So, yeah.
All right, well, those are the responses from the people we heard so far. And I believe moving right along with the programming, we're going back to the host, Trayvon.
Thank you so much, Dan. Let's give him a round of applause. All right, so closing it out, we have one last article. I'm going to call up Sister Patrice Perry. She's going to talk a little bit about domestic violence.
Thank you, Trey. Good evening, Huddle family. So we're going to talk a little bit about domestic violence. Teen slays girlfriend in Harlem. Domestic violence activists demand immediate action. A baby-faced alleged killer reportedly turned himself in on Monday, December the 12th, after being sought in the death of a 16-year-old girl in Harlem. The killing highlights two torturous New York City issues: youth misdirection and domestic violence. When are we going to make domestic violence a hate crime? Said Stephanie McGraw, the founder and CEO of WARM, We All Really Matter. Raising awareness in the community about domestic violence, this is getting worse. Silence hides violence. If you're silent, you are part of the violence. Because what you see or say might save a life. So many people saw her abused by that little boy, said McGraw. For a tense and gut-wrenching day from Sunday, December 11th to Monday night, 18-year-old Zaire Crumbly was being sought in the death of his girlfriend, Sanaya Lawrence, 16 years old. The NYPD circulated video of a figure walking away from the scene as if nothing ever happened. The teenage girl had been stabbed in the neck in a building on 135th and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard right here in Harlem. Just after neighbors said they heard arguing, reports said that Crumbly felt the young lady was seeing someone else, and that was the cause of the fight. The NYPD press statement said that at about 5:40 on Sunday, December 11th, police responded to a 911 call of a female stabbed inside of 2306 Adam Clayton Powell Apartment 1A. Upon arrival, police discovered an unidentified female who was stabbed in the neck at the location. Lawrence was taken to Harlem Hospital where she was pronounced dead. She lived with her mother in Harlem, who McGraw says was working hard to get away from him. McGraw said that Sanaya's mother, Sharice Jackson, is devastated. She doesn't know how she's gonna go on with this tragedy. She doesn't know what she needs to do or what needs to be done, but she does know that her daughter is gone. Black woman was under pressure. Her daughter, she felt she was under pressure. She tried to get her away from the gentleman. That's what we as Black women do. We help our sisters and their families through this dramatic time. This is a baby. She was only a minor. This is awful. Having worked for years on domestic violence cases, now retired NYPD Marge Claxton told the AM News, every year many of our young female fall victim to intimate partners and violence. Stephanie McGraw hosted a rally on Tuesday night in Harlem that initially was planned to seek out the killer. Once Crumley was arrested on Monday, the community vigil became a memorial for Sanaya Lawrence. Harlem activists and community members gathered with her family in front of dozens of lit candles, flyers, photos of Sanaya. It was so overwhelming that her mother had to go back in the car. She couldn't stand out there any longer. Sanaya's family came out too. Her father, aunts, her grandfather, and her great-grandfather. Domestic violence affects all sides of the community. These children are out here drinking and experiencing all kinds of traumas. Something must have happened to this boy, said McGraw. His eyes are vacant. That's the only way you can take someone's life. His eyes were vacant because of the violence he suffered as a little boy, not knowing that both of his parents were in jail. Hurt people hurt people. So as we talk about the domestic violence, I have a question for you guys. So you hear in the article that the neighbors said they always heard them arguing, always heard some type of disturbance in the house. Do you think the neighbors are to blame that this young lady is no longer here? And if you think so, and if you don't think so, come up and let me know why. Why and why not? Are the neighbors to blame that Sanaya is no longer here?
Me personally, I don't really think that the neighbors are to blame. I think that's mainly just because I'm not really a person I'm not really a person who would get in another person's business, but I do see where they're coming from. Like, if you realize that there are two people who are constantly arguing and there might be a problem between them, yeah, you should do something about it. But I still feel as if you never know the full story, so something could be going on and you just never know. That's all.
Thank you. Come up and tell us your thoughts.
I feel like blame is a really strong word. I feel like blame almost implies some sort of responsibility, and I don't feel like that should be placed on the neighbors. It is squarely placed on the person who made the multiple terrible decisions to kill this young woman. I do feel like, though, this should be sort of a teaching lesson for us all that, if you see something, say something, and dysfunction is not function. And while I don't feel like they should be blamed, I do feel like they could have definitely done something to prevent this tragedy from happening. I just don't feel like blame is maybe the right word because, again, blame really implies responsibility.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, to add on to what the two gentlemen before me said, I don't blame the neighbors, but even in my building, I have a good relationship with my neighbors. When I come back from school, they'll be like, "Oh, welcome back. How's everything?" They check on me. They even check on my brothers, even the guys that just stay outside, the elderly. Like, people check on us on my block, in my community. So I'm from a side where, it takes a village to raise a child. So I do believe that they should have looked out, but necessarily myself, maybe they didn't have that type of relationship with them, so I can understand. Yet, I believe this is still a bigger issue that we have to look into, because the fact that she, I want to say, is in that situation in the first place, why she was even still willing to be in that relationship with a man that is putting their hands on you, that to me is the issue. Why is it that she's with that type of person? Did she, what is it? Was she just looking for someone? Maybe she never had a male role model to show her how someone should actually treat you. That's the type of issue and thing I feel like we should really be responding to and figuring out.
Thank you. Thank you. Come on, mother.
Well, I really think the young lady probably was crying out for help and maybe nobody paid her any attention. Because sometimes when these young ladies are with these young gentlemen they are dating, they are so afraid to say anything when they are being abused by the young man that they are dating. So I think that someone should have seen or felt that they were seeing something, but they wasn't saying anything because she was a young lady, he was a young man. But it seemed like there was some love left out somewhere along the line with the young man, because to abuse a young lady and then to take her life, something had failed him also somewhere, because otherwise he wouldn't have taken her life just like that. And for her being a young lady, and maybe she was afraid to speak out or say something. Maybe he had threatened her. You never know. You know, he could have told her, well, you tell your mother, or I'll take her life, or I'll take all of your lives, because that do happen. I've heard those cases before, and where the young man actually did take her life like that. So maybe she was in that predicament that she was afraid that he would take her life, which he did do it eventually. He did take her life. So when we hear things like that, and when you're living, sometimes you're living in a building with someone and nobody says anything, but sometimes they hear things and they don't say anything. But if I was on a case like that, I would have to knock on the doors. Is everything okay? Are you all right? Or I tell her mother, if I had a conversation, maybe you should speak to your daughter about the young gentleman, because maybe she could have been saved. To me, because she was so young, and for any life to be lost at any age, to me is very devastating and it's very hurting. So I hope that don't happen to another young lady. I hope if the young lady out there needs help, I hope she will find the help that she needs to get away from a young man who is threatening her life. Because I knew someone that something like that happened, and he put it on. He put it on Facebook or something that he was going to kill her. So her father got a hold of it, and he found the young man, and he told him, "That's my only daughter." He's saying, "I will do you in." So that just broke that relationship up. That was the end of that one. But I hope that don't happen to another young lady.
Thank you, Mother. Come on, Rosie, close us out.
So I don't know if I've been paying attention enough, but from what I heard, from my perspective, the neighbors did not kill her. The neighbors did not kill her. It was another man. But I do believe that we should blame them a little bit, because if she's saying, "Oh, help me," and someone's stabbing her, and the neighbors did not call 911, that we should blame them for, because if a woman is getting stabbed, we should call 911.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, Rosie. I mean, I feel like the issue at hand is deeper, like what Felivi said. It's first that we don't see each other as my brother's keeper or my sister's keeper, so we allow this thing to happen, like, oh, it's not my responsibility, so there's no sense of village that's happening. But it's also that we have normalized toxicity, and we have allowed for love to also equal pain. And a lot of the young people see that because these are babies. The young man is actually he's from around here, and the young lady went to school around here. So this is all within our vicinity, and the fact that this happened is just sad. We have young black men and young black women dying in every facet of our life, whether that be domestic violence, gun violence, and anything. So what we have to do is truly look at ourselves and try to be better neighbors.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for your comments. And I just want to wrap it up with a final thought. You know, this young lady was only 16 years old, and maybe she was scared to tell anybody. But we should always make sure that there's an open line of communication for our young people. If they can't talk to you, encourage them to talk to a guidance counselor, maybe a friend. pass it on because abuse happens. And maybe to her, she wasn't being abused. As they said, the young man didn't have his parents. They were both in jail, right? So to her, she's probably trying to be a helpmate to him or to like comfort him because he went through so much tragedy not having parents. But at the end of the day, he was a young man whose life is gone and he's taking another life. So it's like we lost on both sides on that kind of way. So for our young people, if you feel like you're in danger, talk to somebody. Find somebody that you can talk to. Don't just let it go under. And, you know, all the apologizing, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. Change behavior is the apology. So make sure you continue to watch out for this case. And as always, we work with Stephanie, so I'm sure that we'll be doing something as a part of helping on the domestic violence side. And that wraps up my Did You Know? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who came up and spoke on our Did You Know articles and who shared. For those of you who also joined us tonight, by show of hands, any first-timers here tonight? All right, repeat audience. All right, well, this is good. You guys keep coming back. Definitely come back and invite your friends. And speaking of arrivals, want to shout out Brother Terrence Floyd, who's in the building, who walked in. Brother George Floyd, good to see you. I ain't even see you when you first walked in. I apologize, brother. But thank you guys so much, and gals. Thank you for always correcting me, Mother Kennedy. Guys and gals, yes, guys and girls, boys and girls. So we're gonna close us out. It's a little after 8 o'clock. I know you guys are hungry. Who could? Trish, you want to pray us out? We're going to close out in prayer, and then we're going to eat. Mm-hmm.
All hearts and minds clear, let us pray. Lord God, we thank you for this night. We thank you for this day. We thank you for this house of justice. God, we ask you to continue to watch over families in this season of giving. Help them to be able to give from their hearts. Give to someone who cannot repay them. God, we ask you to continue to bless Kathy Jordan Sharpton. Continue to keep your hands on her from the crown of her head to the sole of her feet. God, we ask you to continue to send your healing angels in her room. God, we ask you to continue to cover the family, Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton and his family as they travel in this season. Marcus Al's birthday. We ask you to cover them, cover the airplanes, cover the trailways, God. Thank you. And we ask you to bless the hands that prepare the food, bless the hands that are serving it. And we ask you to help us to get back to our homes as we left, safely and in order. And all of God's children said, amen.
All right, good people. Go ahead and help yourself in the back. Please.